and the governor of Michigan. Gretchen Whitmer joins us right now, and I understand you're prepared to make a decision to endorse someone. Who's it going to be?
I am. Good morning. I am really pleased to be here with you. You know, I've been watching this campaign play out, and there's been sources of inspiration in a variety of candidates. But as we go into Michigan's election on Tuesday, I am going to be voting for Joe Biden. And I want to tell you why. You know, Joe Biden is someone that I know is working to protect health care that was expanded under the Obama administration. And that's personal to me. 18 years ago, I was taking care of my mom at the end of her battle with brain cancer and rearing my new child and fighting an insurance company that was wrongfully denying her chemotherapy. And I got to tell you, I have commiserated with Joe about this very thing. He lost Bo to the same brain tumor that took my mom's life, and I know his commitment. And because of the work that Barack Obama and Joe Biden did, I was able to expand Medicaid coverage to 700,000 people in the state of Michigan. When the chips were down, it was the Obama-Biden administration that stepped up and helped out the auto industry. And that was a great thing for our economy as a nation, but it was personal to us here in Michigan. And so I think that the blueprint from 2018 about showing up, focusing on the dinner table issues, and getting things done is exactly what Joe Biden represents, and that's why he's got my enthusiastic support and my vote on Tuesday.
Governor, where do you think Michigan voters stand on some of these issues that you brought to the table, especially very personally in dealing with your own mother? Because, of course, Bernie Sanders has his plan.
Absolutely. And I think the great thing about what we've seen during the course of this primary is that every Democrat on that stage is working to expand access to health care. It is such a complete juxtaposition from what Donald Trump and the Republicans are doing to take that health care away. And so I've always been proud to be a Democrat because I know that health care is personal. And I've met so many Michiganders who've seen a doctor for the first time because of Medicaid expansion, all as a result of the Affordable Care Act. And that's what's at stake in this election. And that's why I think whether you're one of those hardworking auto workers or all of the businesses and economic impacts from the industry in this state, or you're someone who's seen a doctor for the first time because of Medicaid expansion, it was the Obama-Biden administration that brought that to us. When the chips were down, they had our back. And that's why I think that this moment is so important to step out and say, I'm supporting Joe.
Governor, it's Willie Geist. Good to have you on the show this morning. We appreciate you being here. It was just a couple of weeks ago that you said the chances were, quote, probably low that you would endorse in this primary. You said, I'm unlikely to endorse in a primary, highly likely to jump in once we get past it. What changed your mind on that? And was it what you saw on Tuesday?
Well, I think you all know that politics can change fast. A few days can be a lifetime. And what we've seen in terms of, you know, the ability to coalesce and build a coalition that really has diverse representation, that is reflective of who we are as a party and what we need as a nation, has really started to show that Joe Biden is our strongest candidate going into the fall. And I believe that. And I am excited about his candidacy. I am eager to take part, you know, in a lot of the national conversation around his campaign, because I think we all know Michigan's incredibly important. All roads to the White House lead through my state, and I want to make sure that we've got a strong ability to help impact where we are headed as a nation.
So is it fair to say the strength, perhaps the surprising strength Vice President Biden showed across the country on Tuesday influenced your decision?
I'll just say, you know what, as a candidate who's been written off, I saw what happened with Joe Biden and their ability to, you know, pick themselves off the mat, dust themselves off, and show the grit it takes to be successful and bring others along. And I think that's what's so important, too. Anyone who's supported Elizabeth Warren, she's fantastic. Same with Amy Klobuchar and Kamala and Cory Booker and Pete Buttigieg. I mean, this is a group that has shown we are thinking about everyone in the American population. And we welcome all supporters, Bernie's supporters as well. If and when Joe is the ultimate nominee, we're going to be a place where everyone can find a spot, because we're fighting for the things that really matter to people's lives every day in this country, and we're going to get it done.
Governor Elise Jordan here. There are 5 days before Michigan's primary, and Bernie Sanders won a narrow victory over Hillary Clinton in 2016. Do you have any predictions for how Joe Biden will fare in the upcoming contest? And do you think that his support, his prior support for free trade, could hurt him in Michigan?
I think there's a lot of enthusiasm in Michigan for Vice President Biden. I think that there's a lot of enthusiasm for Bernie Sanders, and I think we're going to have a spirited debate. I know that, there are a lot of leaders who have embraced Joe's candidacy and are ready to move forward, and there are a lot who, like Bernie, it's a conversation that's really important. I'm not going to predict what happens, but I am going to say that I'm enthusiastic, and as my fellow Michiganders have asked me what I'm going to do, I wanted to share it with them, a few days before this election happens, so that people know why I'm supporting Joe. I think it's important that we have candidates who are showing up, who are focused on those dinner table issues, and have a record of getting things done. And when Michigan needed help, it was Barack Obama and Joe Biden who had our backs. And I think that's really important as we go in and make choices on Tuesday.
Governor Karine Jean-Pierre has a question for you. Karine?
Yes. Hi, Governor. My question to you is, what do Democrats need to do today, right now in this moment, to ensure that they win back Michigan this coming fall?
Well, I think show up. It is, I feel like I'm repeating myself. I've done so many interviews over the course of the last year and a half since I won my election. But it really is, the 2018 blueprint that I used was to show up, to actually stay focused on those dinner table issues, whether it is closing a skills gap or cleaning up drinking water, ensuring that we expand access to affordable, quality health care. These are the fundamentals that Americans are worried about. We don't have enough time to follow every, conversation that's going on in Washington, D.C., because we're trying to take care of our families. And we're hardworking, good people. We expect our leaders to be as well. And so that blueprint, I think, showing up with a record of having gotten things done is what inspires and moves and is important to people in not just Michigan, but I think across the state. We're thinking about our kids and their future and who we are as Americans. And I think that's the most wonderful thing about this nation. It's a great challenge, too, but I think those are the things that really matter to voters, whether you're in Michigan or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or California or Florida, for that matter.
Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer with her endorsement of Joe Biden this morning before that state's primary on Tuesday. Thank you so much for being on with us this morning. And
good to be with you. Thank you.
Joe Biden is surging in the Democratic primary race, and now Republicans are sharpening their investigations into his son, Hunter. The GOP chairman leading the charge insists the timing has nothing to do with the election calendar. Morning Joe is coming right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.